Bright Duty. Every student matters.
The next topic is respiration. Question number 1. What are the various ways in which glucose gets oxidized? So, I'll tell you the 3 ways in which glucose gets oxidized. Glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. First of all, it gets broken down into pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon molecule. Now, there are 3 ways in which this pyruvate gets oxidized or broken down. First is in the presence of oxygen. That is, if an organism is undergoing aerobic respiration, like humans, there is a presence of oxygen, then what happens? This pyruvate is completely broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and a lot of energy is released during this process. So there is a complete breakdown. From 6-carbon compound chain, it is broken down into a molecule with 3 carbon. Then it is further broken down into molecules containing 1 carbon only. So there is a complete breakdown of glucose molecules with release of energy. This happens only in aerobic respiration when there is presence of enough oxygen. Now, second case is if there is lack of oxygen. What will happen? Especially it happens in our muscle cells of human. If there is lack of oxygen, but the person is doing some vigorous exercise, what will happen? This pyruvate gets broken down into lactic acid, which is a 2-carbon compound, plus energy is released. So this happens in human muscle cells, that glucose is broken down into lactic acid, which gets accumulated, but energy is released. Third case can be, for example, in yeast, there is no oxygen, absence of oxygen. So in yeast, anaerobic respiration takes place when there is no oxygen. They can do respiration, they can break down the glucose into ethanol, which is again a 2-carbon compound. So ethanol plus carbon dioxide plus energy. So these are the 3 various ways in which glucose gets oxidized or broken down to release energy. One is aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, and if there is lack of oxygen in human muscle cells. Question number 2. Differentiate between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So first difference is aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen, while anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. Second difference is glucose is completely broken down into carbon dioxide, while in anaerobic respiration there is no complete breakdown does not take place. It is broken down into a 2-carbon compound, that is ethanol. Third difference, a lot of energy is released in aerobic respiration. 1 molecule of glucose releases 38 molecules of ATP, which are the energy currency. While in anaerobic respiration, 1 molecule of glucose gives only 2 molecules of ATP. So more energy is released in aerobic, while less energy is released in anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration takes place in humans and other land animals, while anaerobic respiration takes place in microorganisms like yeast. Next question. How are the lungs or the alveoli, they can ask you a question for lungs or the alveoli, designed for exchange of gases? So our windpipe, or which is called the trachea, it breaks down into 2 branches which are called the bronchi, and they enter each lung, left lung and right lung. Now inside the lung, they further break down into smaller branches. Now notice a big tree. There is a stem, it divides into 2 branches, then further smaller branches. Similarly, the bronchi also, it divides into very small thin branches which are called bronchioles. At the end of each bronchiole, there is an air sac which is called alveoli. It's something like this. At the end, there is an air sac called alveoli. Now, this alveoli increases the surface area for absorption of oxygen, right? And moreover, it is richly supplied by the blood vessels. There are network of capillaries surrounding the alveoli. So as we breathe in, the air which is rich in oxygen enters the bronchi, then bronchioles, and then reaches the alveoli. This air is rich in oxygen. So this oxygen diffuses into the blood through capillary wall. And whatever blood is coming to the alveoli through pulmonary artery brings the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs. So this blood is rich in carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide gets diffused back into the alveolar air. So oxygen is absorbed into the blood while carbon dioxide is thrown out of the blood into the alveoli. So the air we breathe in is rich in oxygen while the air we breathe out is deficient in oxygen but rich in carbon dioxide. So how is the structure of lung designed for exchange of gases? In this you have to explain the structure of alveoli, that they are air sacs, they are very thin walled and they increase the surface area for absorption of oxygen, and they are richly supplied by the blood vessels for exchange of gases. The next question, what will happen if the person is deficient in hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is a component of blood. It is present in RBCs and it is made from the mineral iron. Now, what if the person is deficient in hemoglobin? This condition is called anemia. If a child does not take diet which is rich in iron, it will lead to anemia when hemoglobin content decreases. Now, once oxygen enters into the blood, what happens? It makes a complex with the hemoglobin. This is called oxyhemoglobin. And this complex then it is supplied to each and every cell, every tissue, every organ of our body. So actually hemoglobin acts as a carrier which carries the oxygen to different parts of the organ, from the lungs to the other tissues, right? So if the hemoglobin content is low, then oxygen supply to the cell will not be very efficient. The cells of our body or the tissues of our body will not be able to get the enough oxygen. So what will happen? Even after small exercise or a little bit of hard work, the person will feel tired, will feel less energetic, lethargic because of lesser supply of oxygen. As I just told you, oxygen is required for breakdown of glucose to release energy. So if this oxygen is not supplied to the tissue, then energy will not be released and the person will feel tired and lethargic after even small exercise. Next question. Describe the process of breathing. Basically, the first step of respiration is breathing. That is inhalation and exhalation. We inhale in the oxygen-rich air and exhale out the carbon dioxide-rich air. And the exchange happens at the alveolar level. So breathing is only a physical process in which we inhale in air and exhale out. The chemical process is called the cellular respiration. So to describe the process, first you have to divide in two parts, the inhalation and the exhalation. Now during inhalation, the two parts of the body which play a major role are the diaphragm and the rib cage. So as we breathe in, the rib cage moves upward and outward, which increases increases the capacity of the lung. It expands them. And the diaphragm, which is a muscle on which the lungs rest, it is curved. So during breathing, it just contracts and becomes straightened. So this process increases our thoracic cavity and the air enters inside because there is low pressure inside, so air enters. Once the lungs expand, the air enters inside. Now during exhalation, what happens? The rib cage moves backward and downward, which actually reduces the thoracic cavity and pushes the lungs, and the diaphragm again relaxes and becomes dome shaped. So this reduces the thoracic cavity and air comes out of the lungs. This is exhalation. So in this question, you have to describe both the inhalation and the exhalation part and the role played by diaphragm as well as the rib cage.